Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Straight Razor podcast with me, James.
Me, Joe.
As you can see or hear, this episode we are not in person. We are not sat in a lovely park in Canvey Island, or on Canvey Island, I like to say. We had a little Zoom meeting with a local personality, Mr. Rees Broomfield, local artist, producer, studio manager, studio owner, all-round nice guy. His studio is called SS2 Recording. We love it there. It's a huge, amazing space for local musicians that if you've never looked into what studios are available around the area, his is definitely the mecca of where people should go and deal with, and to be in a professional environment that looks like the studios you'd see in LA. It's an amazing place full of amazing gear. We've known Rees for a very long time. Joe's done multiple sessions with Rees. I've done multiple sessions with Rees. We've been in bands where we played in his studios. We've been in bands where we've rehearsed in his studios. We've used his expertise many a time. Me and Rees have also worked together on a few different sessions and with a few different bands. So we sat down, all in our individual homes, on a little Zoom meeting, and we had a little interview with him. So here's a few moments from that now.
Hello.
There we go. How is everyone today?
Very good, yeah. Yeah, having a good day.
It's good that we've had this really nice weather during all this, because we were talking, me and Rosie were talking about it today, that it's been a lot easier with the nice sun and the heat. It means it feels more like a holiday than it should do, really. Yeah,
you can get out a bit more, can't you? Enjoy it.
I suppose that also comes with the negatives of the beaches being really busy and everyone getting angry about that as well. So today's guest is Rees Broomfield. We've had a guest in the past. On the first episode, we had Mick Denny and Matthew Bolter. On today's episode, we've got Rees. Rees is a good friend of ours. He owns a local studio called SS2 Recording. Rees, how you doing today? You all cool, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks.
We talked about Zoom meetings last episode being painfully awkward and sort of filled with their own theatrics and difficulties. Have you been doing a lot of Zoom meetings?
Yeah, well, especially right at the beginning when we first went into lockdown, it was like the novelty. Everyone was like, right, we need to do a Zoom meeting. So all of that, a few of the artists that I was working with and some of the management people and that were like having these meetings, and it was pretty good, but the novelty wore off after a few weeks, and I haven't had a Zoom meeting for at least 2 weeks, which is fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, they're just sort of, and you get even less done than you would in a normal conference call. You know, the sort of thing that you could definitely just get it done in emails, just because you can see each other and everyone looks slightly more awkward. And
I work with a guy who he's not very tech savvy, and he's inadvertently set the background of his Zoom meeting to be on a beach permanently, and he doesn't know how to turn it off, and it's this one here.
Yeah.
So every meeting, even though it's it might be a really serious business meeting, he's in Barbados, baby.
You look great.
Having a great time.
I like the way that it's windy as well. That's awesome. I thought it was a still image.
No, every time, every meeting.
This isn't really what my studio looks like. I don't own that guitar. This is So, Rees, we've known you for years and years and years. We met you when you were still in your first. Well, we've known you in every iteration of every studio space you've probably had, really. I suppose back in the studio you had at your mum and dad's.
Yeah. My first studio was at my parents' house, and I remember, James, you were still studying at uni to do your work, and you came and done some mixing.
Yes,
and I think that's when we sat and had a proper chat and done some work together. And yeah, it's sort of grown from there, really. I kind of went from a tiny little room with no ambience whatsoever to a huge warehouse with more space than you could ever want, really. And it was a bit of a shock at the beginning, but it's been 5 years now, and we're finally kind of making use of the space and not being intimidated by the fact that it's huge. And at the beginning I was just filling it with like carpet and like sofas, just because I wanted it to be dead. I was so used to working in a small dead room, but now it's the exact opposite. It's really open and really reverberant, and it's a great space to work in.
I mean, your first space was literally just dead. It's so dead you could hear your heartbeat. You know? It's great, really.
Yeah. I did do my calculations. I tried to treat the high frequencies at 60%. So I done this sort of checkered pattern on the walls and the ceiling, and tried to work out how to make it so it was 60% treated. But it was very dead, and it done all right. You know, actually, your last guest on the show, or one of your guests, Matt Bolter, we recorded his second album out of that little room. But that being said, I did retrack all of the drums in the living room at the house because my parents went on holiday, and I just thought, well, let's just try it. So I tried it, and then I had to retrack every song because it sounded so much better.
That album sounds fantastic as well. I think it's one of his best albums. It's really interesting. I think you can really hear that you're being quite sort of daring, and because it's such a massive project to take on, and maybe something you hadn't really done before. Lots of sort of strings and interesting instruments and interesting people to work with. Yeah.
When we done that album, that was the first album I ever done, and I was pretty early on in my career. So, but yeah, like you say, we were just having fun with it because I didn't really have many methods at that point or any sort of guidelines that I like to work by. So we were taking like toms and tuning them to make them the bass in the song, and recording all sorts of weird stuff and just experimenting with everything. But the songs were just really good. So it was easy for me, really. I played drums on a lot of it as well. But yeah, Matt's just really good.
I find that with some of, if I listen back to some tracks I've done, you know, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, sometimes it's like, you know, what are these sounds and how did I get these sounds? Because I was just layering random plugins on, you know, until something sounded interesting.
Yeah.
Sort of listening back in your ignorance, you do things that probably you would never do now, but they actually sound really good. And I think it reminds me sometimes. It's a nice gentle reminder to try and keep being interesting and trying to make new sounds, and don't just get stuck to the same plugins and do things because you think that's the way that they should be done with the right compressor and the right preamp or whatever, the boring sort of, you know, normal ways to do things.
I've always found Rees to be a very hands-on dude in the studio, and I saw that in one of your videos on your Facebook page where you broke down a track that you'd done recently, and you said, just really casually, like I just went in there and just laid down some drums just because I felt like that was the right part for it, and I was just sort of, it was absolutely the right part as well. So you got like a really strong gut instinct. Where does that come from? Is it just sort of the confidence just to go into there and just lay down the track, or is it sort of you can hear it before you go and do it?
I think a lot of the time, because I play drums, I kind of need to go and sit behind a drum kit sometimes to hear the song, which sounds like a weird thing, but I've always learned songs and played songs and spoke to people about songs while sitting at a drum kit. So it's, for me, I'm like, I think I can hear an idea, but as soon as I sit down, it just sort of falls out. And I think that's why I just sort of run out and just jump on a drum kit, even if it's not mic'd up. I'll just leave a mic in the room and just go, I'll just get the idea down. But also, I love just trying stuff. And I think if I can act that way in the studio and just sort of like go and try ideas and not be afraid if it's shit, basically, that frees up the people I'm working with to feel comfortable to do the same. And I think that's where the good stuff starts happening, especially if you're in with someone that you're working a lot with. You want to try and sort of give them that freedom and that confidence, and maybe, you know, go in and try a few terrible ideas and everyone sort of shoot you down, just so they can see that doesn't matter and that's cool, and that, yeah, everyone's going to be cool about it. So, but yeah, I don't really know where it comes from. I think it does come with confidence. I think, you know, years ago, perhaps I would have been a bit more timid about stuff like that. But I think you just got to try it. And if you've got an idea, you should just try it. And then if it doesn't work, then no big deal. But I think once you get the right working mentality going, a lot of the time, you know, if you feel inclined to run into the other room and start recording, then it's probably a good idea. So yeah, I just like to let things flow and then see what happens.
I think there's a few things there. I think, you know, first of all, a lot of great producers are drummers. I think there seems to be a link between a drummer's brain and the way the actual instrument itself lends itself to music production and lends itself to songwriting more than people probably would expect, because it's percussive, but also it adds elements of lift and interesting parts of dynamics to tunes. But also I think there's a second thing where a lot of artists you work with need drummers. You know, at the end of the day, you have to deliver a product for these people. So I think, you know, your confidence helps push that product forward, so they're happy with the result they get from you.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the first point you made ties in with that really well. For me, that the reason that might be the case is because I've always thought about the drummer in the band, like kind of driving the band. Like, you know, if you stop, then the whole gig stops. If you speed up, then everyone else speeds up. And I kind of feel the same about like a producer as well. You're kind of like driving the mothership a little bit. You're kind of like, I'm in control of all this stuff. And, you know, so the two things go hand in hand for me. And I think maybe there's something in it with the whole, the dynamics thing's definitely a thing. Like, you know, if a song's not working and we haven't got any drums yet, if I could get the drums right, then I'll get the song in shape quite quick, because it, like you said, it like I can play the dynamics in, even if it's just programming. Like I need to feel the song whilst I'm playing it, and then I know when it needs to lift and when it needs to come back. And then once you've got that, you've kind of got the shape of the track. And I think that for me, that's the same as I said before. Like, I need to sit behind the drum kit and play it to know where it needs to go. Obviously, it's different if I'm working with a band and it's the track's already written and stuff. But I work with a lot of people that are open to lots of changes and doing writing whilst we're recording as well. So in those instances, I might just jump on a kit or jump on a drum machine or whatever it might be and just see what comes out without having a conversation about it. I'll just try it, and then you kind of judge people's faces, judge their reactions, and then you know whether you're on the right track or not. And if you're not, then you've only wasted like maybe 5-10 minutes. Not really a big issue.
Do you think that's part of your process, is trying to have things at hand that you can quickly try? And that's probably the beauty of having the space you've got now, this big space filled with gear, you know, filled with great gear, which means you can just try things out and keep rolling with things and trying to find interesting sounds.
Our idea at the studio has always been to have everything ready to go pretty quickly, or at least easy to set up. And even more so, like, we're still closed at the moment, but once we reopen, everything's going to be very already set to as much as possible. So for certain projects, it's going to be even better because everything's going to be plugged in, everything's going to be on, everything's going to be tested, everything's going to be mic'd if it needs to be mic'd. So you can literally walk around the room. There won't be as much stuff out. We've tried to sort of strip it back a bit, so there's not so much stuff that we have to clean all the time. But everything that is out is the things that we know we use all the time, and they're ready to go, like straight away. Working literally every waking hour at the moment, trying to get the studio clean and freshened and like set up for social distancing and all that. We're going to start doing some trial sessions maybe towards the end of June, and then we're officially reopen on the 1st of July. So looking forward to that.
We'll talk about your setup now. So you're in a shed, aren't you?
Yeah. I wasn't going to call it a shed, but yeah, it's basically it's a nice shed. It's got like proper walls and stuff, but from the outside it looks like a shed. I've got a few little creepy crawly friends that come and see me every now and again, but I've got a little set of Genelecs and a computer.
Are you sort of rumbling them out of their positions, do you think? It's disturbing the wildlife.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something to working at home for you? You know, like the way Twitter has, decided that everyone can just work from home.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's something you should set up permanently.
I think I'm going to keep it, but not so I won't work here every day. But if someone else is using the studio, then at least I've got somewhere I can mix and stuff. I'm definitely going to keep it. And certainly in the first few weeks of lockdown, it was really nice. I was even writing music, and I haven't written music in years. I was being really creative, making tracks myself, and doing some mixes, editing some podcasts that people have sent me and stuff, and like keeping really busy, but also seeing the kids loads and spending loads of time at home, obviously. And it was really nice. And then I think maybe about 5 weeks in, that started to become quite difficult, especially when the weather went a bit dark and a bit grey and we couldn't be in the garden as much. It got a bit, I suppose the novelty of these things just wear off after a while. I think
definitely.
that's when I sort of turned my attention back to the studio and sort of let's look at what could be done there. And we've got a brand new kitchen. We've got a shower and a separate toilet now, because the kitchen and toilet used to be in one room.
I never really thought about the fact that the toilet was in the kitchen. I never really thought about that, but that's true, isn't it? I've never thought. There was a door, obviously. It was sort of by itself. But if you remove the door, it would be awkward while you're doing the washing up.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal at all. Now we've got like a really nice place where you can sort of relax and create and make some dinner if you want to make dinner and stuff. So yeah, we'll be looking to make the studio sort of like fully residential in the next 6 months, I reckon. So
by that you mean having a place to actually stay overnight as well?
Yeah. So we've got the kitchen and the shower room. We just need to find somewhere for people to sleep, and then we're good. It's never going to be like luxury, but it'll be comfortable and basically free. We're not looking to sort of make our rates any different or much different at all. It's just we want to be able to offer that for people that are either out of town or like to work strange hours or whatever. Yeah, just make it a bit more of a comfortable place to really sort of lock down and make music. I think that's going to be a bit of a buzzword for the next 12 months. It's like we want to go in lockdown and be somewhere safe.
You've made me think that maybe I should get all my mics out and give them a good scrub, because I've not gone near them yet.
Do you choose the artists you're going to work with, or do they sort of approach you? And how do you sort of prepare for like a new project?
I wouldn't say I choose the people I want to work with. I'll generally be like the house engineer at the studio. So if work comes in, then I'll do it. There are certain projects that I have chosen. I've either sort of made connections or made inroads with certain artists because I feel like it'd be a good match. So there's a few people that I've sort of I've made connections with and started working with in that respect. But in terms of how do I prepare to work with someone new, really it's a lot of consultation. Really, it's like talking to them a lot. Sometimes they're not from the local area, so it'd be like talking to them on the phone or talking to them on Facebook or having a Zoom meeting with them, and just chatting about music and sharing ideas. And I'll get them to send me some songs. That's normally the first port of call is like, have you got any demos? Have you got anything at all you can show me? So I kind of know what I'm looking at. And then from there, I might say, oh, have you heard this? I think you'll like this. And then they might share some music with me that I haven't heard. And then straight away, I've sort of sparked off this little kind of relationship based around good music. And I think that's a really good starting point. And then obviously it then gets to talk about, okay, what do you want to do? And sometimes people say, I really want to do an album. But I've only got enough money to maybe do one track. So I'm going to record an album, but I'm going to do it over the course of 2 years. And then we have conversations about continuity and how to make that work. Is that going to feel like an album after 2 years? Or would it be better to maybe do a few singles or look at doing an EP, stuff like that? And then we sort of get onto like, okay, let's look at a budget then, and what sort of budget have we got to work with? And at that point, I'll basically sort of tailor make a plan for their project and say, like, this is what I think we should do. This is how long I think it's going to take. This is how much I think it's going to cost. And sort of say, take it or leave it, really. And I normally give them a few options. So they've got sort of different ideas, and they can sort of go back and maybe speak to their management or speak to their bandmates and relay it to them. And then they decide what they want to do. I mean, we've talked about that, Rees, recently. You've been saying that you've been trying to convince people that convince might be a bit strong word, but you'll be discussing the fact that people really should start a project with you and anyone. The best way to start a project with an engineer and a producer is to have a day of production and trying to figure out what these songs are. So the first time you're hearing them isn't the first time they're playing them on the drum kit as you're recording it. You need to really come together from a place of unity with these things. Yeah, I think just sitting down and like listening to music in the studio is the best thing. And I've done that with lots of bands recently, and just said, look, just come down. We'll just sit and have a chat and just listen to some stuff, but by the end of that meeting, I'm excited. They're really excited.
Yeah.
We've all shared some music, which always, if you're a musician or an engineer or whatever, sharing music's just great fun, and that sort of gets everyone excited, and then you can go from there. But also, I think, something that a lot of bands, especially locally and of a certain level, they think that they could just sort of rock up and just like play the song like they do in rehearsal, and it will sound as good as their favourite band. And I think they just fail to realise that there's a lot more groundwork that goes in before you actually start recording. And sometimes it just seems a little bit unglamorous and not fun. So it can take a little bit of time to convince people.
It's not really sort of sex, drugs and rock and roll. It's more like, you're actually in there to do a job. You've actually got to focus and try and make a good, some use of the time that you've got. I mean, I know we were probably guilty of it at the time when we recorded with you, is you sort of turn up and think, I'll just play it the same way I've always played it. And then I think it was after a few sessions that, particularly from the drum point of view, I realised actually, no, I need to take a step back and think about it more as an instrument as opposed to sort of a sort of an element of energy within the band. Actually, I need to consider every single strike has to be on the drums. Every hit has to be even. I mean, that almost blew my mind. I'm not a very technical drummer at the best of times, and it was like, okay, I can't just turn up and blaze through it the same way I did last night at the gig. I have to focus on this point. And I think it was working with you as well, was sort of brought that in there, because it was a very relaxed environment to do that in. We've been in some places where it's just like, yeah, get on with it, whatever, fine. But
and you're sort of watching the stands fall, and you sort of start seeing Behringer, and you sort of know that the quality of what you're going to get from it is going to be really low. You sort of need a guy, and what I think what's great about you, Rees, is that you can be firm as well. You could say that's the wrong thing to do. Do this way, because you're right. You're steering the session.
Mm.
Yeah, someone's got to be driving the ship, definitely. I think, like what you said, Joe, about some people just let you get on with it, and I think like you've got two options, really, haven't you? You've either got like, right, do I argue with the band and try and make them do the right thing because I know it's the right thing for them, or do I just like go and get myself another coffee, lean back on my chair and just sort of let them go for it, and then like say, oh, it's not my fault that you guys aren't any good. And I've just never been one of those. Like I'm just not interested in that. I'd rather go and work in Tesco or something. I'd much rather say like, look, there are issues here, and we're going to have to spend most of today doing exactly the opposite of what you thought you were going to be doing, because we need to sort these things out. But by the time we've done it, like you'll be thanking me, like I can see where it can be, but it's going to take a bit of work. And that happens, and there's always that kind of hour, 2 hour like conversation where the vibe in the room really drops, and like you have to really like explain to everyone and try and say, look, I'm not doing this for any other reason other than for like what's best for the song and what's best for your recordings. Like there's no reason for me to bring this up if it wasn't important. And then we get over it, and then 99% of the time people are absolutely buzzing by the time we get to a finish point.
A lot of time when you're recording, you do go into that dip of thinking you're the worst musician or the worst person that's ever picked up sticks or try to play guitar. You go into that.
It's because you've got if you're in any other art form, you have it recorded and played back to you instantly. Which is just heartbreaking, And
the worst thing as well is that everyone else in the room pause over that track and go,
Yeah. Especially if
you just sweat.
Especially if you disagree about how it actually went,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you come back in the room and you go, I smashed that, and we go, that was so behind the beat, or in front.
Well, you
of the
get
beat.
guilty of saying, "Oh, actually, yeah, that was great. That's fine. That's perfect." Really, what it is you're sick of doing it. You've been doing it for 4 hours. You just want to get the damn thing finished and move on. And everyone's like, "No, I'll go back again." No, that is the one.
You've always been a man that needed to push over the wall, Joe. I think.
I could easily just sort of sit sit against it.
You're very good at going, oh, fucking hell, I've done 4 takes, just comp it and fuck you and replace the kick, I don't give a shit, and move it around.
Fuck it, that'll do, mate.
Because I think, Joe, you know that we'll go into those sessions thinking we're going to do 5 songs, which is sort of what Rees is saying. You know that we want you to perform 100 more times. You know, back when we were doing the ends, we might come into a weekend of recording with Rees and we might go, already engineer, our thing would have been, right, let's smash out 4 singles and maybe get a load of photos done as well. And we're going to record a documentary at the same time. It's just insane.
That it all comes back to that consultation time and a bit, and like having the conversations first. And it's stuff I've only been doing the last few years, and so when I worked with you guys years ago, like I wasn't thinking in that way either. Like so we did just go in kind of blind and just sort of start tracking, see what happens, and then people say what they want on the first day. And I'm a little bit, that's probably a bit too much. But it's a bit late to start having that debate about how much you should be trying to record because you're already on the clock, So I've sort of learned over the years to like make sure you get all that stuff ironed out beforehand. And then just things run a lot smoother. And if there are, disagreements that need to happen, then let's make sure that happens like in pre-production, so everyone can have their arguments about how the arrangement should be and how many songs and what song are you going to record, and what's the tempo going to be? Are we going to use a click track? There's so much stuff that you need to decide. And trying to do that on the first day it's just an absolute vibe killer. I think like everyone's just stressed out within a few hours because there's so many decisions that need to be made. Everyone suddenly realizes how much work there is to do, and then they're looking at how much time they've got and how much budget they've got, and it just creates a really the wrong emotions for people. That the idea is to get the best performance out of people, and if they're overwhelmed within 2 hours, then you're not going to get a good result. So it's all about making people feel comfortable as best as you can. Some people are just not very receptive, so you don't get the chance to do that. You just have to sort of rock up on the day and then do your best. But most people are sort of into the idea of having a plan, and it definitely works for me.
I mean, what about when you're tracking live? If you're tracking like that CB6 stuff you've been doing, I know that was over a long period of time. Instead of looking at it as layers of production each day of drums, then we might do some bass, and we sort of have to think about these things as layers. When you're doing a band live, is it a bit more? Is it less thought about, or do you still have those sort of discussions as well? Those
sessions, no discussions. They just booked the studio, because when they first came in to record back in 2016. Which is when we started tracking for that album, I didn't really know them. I kind of had spoke to Ryan, the singer, like on Facebook a few times, and they'd kind of flirted with the idea of coming and doing drums like years ago, and it never happened. And then suddenly they just said, right, we want to come record. And at that point, there was no talk of an album or nothing. They just wanted to come and track it live. So that was one of the ones where, I put a 57 in front of each guitar amp. I put close mics on the drums because all the amps were in the room with the drums, so there's no room mics or anything. DI and a mic on the bass, and then just went, right, well, that's it. There's nothing more that I can do, because once they're rolling, once they're playing, they'll just spend all day trying to get maybe 2 tracks, get a good take of a couple of tracks, and then I wouldn't see them again for a few months. And then they'd come back and do the same again.
So what caused that?
I just had to try and make sure.
Was that them not having all the songs ready for an album, or were they just coming in with the songs they had just written and then we're getting them done and moving on, sort of thing? Was that the vibe of that? And then eventually they just had enough to make an album?
I think they had all the songs. I think they're just busy with they've got like jobs and families and stuff, and life gets in the way. So they just sort of, whenever they could find like gaps in their schedule, they'd book in. And like I say, there wasn't really any real talk of an album at the start. Maybe they might have mentioned it, but it just felt like we were just sort of just recording just for a laugh, really. And I think perhaps that's maybe why it came out quite good, and they were quite happy with it, because it was very relaxed and it was live, and they'd never done that before. And it was kind of come at it from like a really old school metal vibe rather than like everything being on a click and everything being quantized and loads of drum samples and stuff. It was more organic, and I could just set them up, spend literally maybe 2-3 hours getting sounds. I kept it really simple so that it didn't take long to do that. It was normally trying to convince Joey, the drummer, to maybe put a new snare head on or something, or some new heads on his toms. And then the rest of the guys, like, they've got their sound. You just need to put a mic in front of them, and they're so loud that, you know, it just sounds great. Like, so it wasn't like a really technical or difficult session to engineer, other than the fact that they're really loud. It was more a case of just like trying to facilitate them being able to like play loads and relax and feel comfortable doing that. And they were rehearsing every now and again at the studio as well, so they were really relaxed being in that room. We've got all the tracks recorded, and like I say, it took about 4 years. And then after that, Ryan came in and done the vocals, and we done that over the course of maybe a year. The vocals took maybe a year, but we done lots of sessions, and that was very much writing like Ryan would write the lyrics, and then once he had something, would just like grab one of these and just sing it into one of these, and then that was it. And we just kept a really simple vocal chain as well for the whole album. So basically it was just hanging out, them playing, like rehearsing as if they were rehearsing, because they're a good band, they can get away with doing that. And I didn't really get into the production at all. I literally just engineered it and mixed it. I didn't get into, apart from a few moments when we were doing the vocals, there might be a few times where it was like having to sort of get involved with the rhythmic flow of the vocals, or maybe like too many syllables or not enough syllables or stuff like that. Yeah, I didn't really produce that at all. Like, they never sent me any demos or anything like that. It was very much like, we know what we want to do, we know how we sound, we just need to record it, and we don't want it to be flash and, you know, stressful. We want to just have fun and just hang out and make music, and that's what we done, and it was good.
How does that compare? You know, that seems like you said, you didn't get, the production was sort of non-existent almost. How does that compare against something like Becky Margaret, where the production is very layered and it takes a very long time? You're working on, I mean, with Becky, were you working on a track at a time, or were you working it as an album?
So with Becky, we started just working on individual tracks. So we done like one song, which is the one I've done the video for on my YouTube. That was the first track that we done together, and that was just a standalone single. So I don't think that's going to be on a new album. But we started off we'll just meet up and maybe do a day at a time. She'd send me a session beforehand. We'd talk about what we think might work and stuff like that, and then I'd do some work on it, and then she'd come in, and then later in the day, like, some of the guys from her band might come in and help us finish things off. And it started like that, and I think we done maybe like 4 or 5 tracks like that. And then her management and label were like, when do you think the album's going to be finished? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, we're only doing one track every now and again at the moment, so at this rate, maybe a year's time. And they were like, can we speed that up? I was like, well, yeah. So we just set aside 2 weeks and finished the record over 2 weeks. And because we already had a few songs kind of pretty close, it meant that we could record like even more than what they needed. So we've got a few extra tracks that I've done as well that perhaps are not going to be on the album now. But yeah, and that was great. We just spent 2 weeks every day, and went through our normal process. But yeah, it's completely different to recording like a metal band. You know, it's a lot of programming, a lot of experimentation, late night vocal sessions, and like very much like got to get the mood right and try and read how people are feeling and look and think, like, steer it in the right direction. So we never really wanted to feel like we were working. It needed to feel like we were hanging out making music. It's the same thing again. It's just like, let's just make it feel like we're hanging out making music. So if we're not feeling something, we'll move on. So when we were doing the 2-week stint, we'd just jump around on different songs like all the time. As soon as we got a little bit stuck or a little bit bored, we'd just move on to something else.
It's interesting there, because I think the vibe you're coming from it there is almost like you're part of the band in that situation? You know, it sounds like even the sort of language you're using, it's like, you know, you almost have to be part of the music, you know, which is a role maybe most producers and sound engineers don't take on.
Yeah, well, I think they do. I think a lot of the good engineers do. Certainly, I think that's the cool thing about doing this for a job, is that you get to sort of join the band for a week or 2 weeks or a couple of days, and then you don't have to go on tour, you don't have to deal with all the other bullshit. You're done. You're just on to the next thing, and then you can, 1 minute you're doing metal, the next minute you're doing pop, and it's great. I don't think that's the reason I got into it, but now I'm doing it. I'm like really grateful that that's how it is, because, you know, it's good fun, and I love being in the band, but there's so much about being in the band that sucks. So if you could just join the band for the fun bit, which in my opinion is like getting in the studio, then it's perfect. Is
that why, you know, how's what's going on with Youth Club then? is that sort of where, is that why maybe the Youth Club stuff has slowed down a bit, because the production and the recording stuff is really where you want to be?
No, I don't think so. I think we're all just, well, certainly me and Jerry, the singer, you know, we've got families and that now, and it's hard to just go touring for 2 weeks or whatever. So it just sort of like slowly wound down a little bit. And I think we've all enjoyed the freedom of not being too committed to going on tour and not receiving multiple emails from different people that are involved with the band asking what we're doing and when's this going to be finished and when are you going to do this, and, you know, ploughing all our own money into it. And it just got a bit much, and I think we needed a break. And for me, because we're not splitting up or anything like that, like we're all still really good mates, and there is still music around. We are still working on little bits and bobs, and we do have conversations every now and again about music and stuff. But for me, it was like, we should probably stop for a bit if we want there to be any more music, because if we just keep going with sort of like things not being in the best way, then it might end up ruining it, and we might end up never making any more music again. And it wasn't because we fell out or anything like that. It was just, it's hard to explain. I think people that are in bands will probably know what I'm on about, but it gets to a point where it just doesn't feel like the thing that you should be doing. And I think when you've got young families and that just takes over a little bit. So I'd love to do some more Youth Club stuff.
You said that you want to open up, but let's say chances are, I think, you know, what you'd expect is that the government are going to say businesses have to open up with social distancing in mind. How's that going to work in your studio? It's a large studio, so you totally could be 2 meters apart.
Yeah, no.
At all points. Are you going to mark the floor up? I've seen some studios do this thing where they've got like taped squares.
Yeah, we haven't fully decided on how we're going to do that yet, but yeah, literally the last, you know, we were well aware of what the guidelines were going to be before they, before they came out, or we had an idea of what it might be. Yeah. We were under no illusion that like this is going to end really soon and we can just reopen and go back to normal. Like, we knew this is going to be a long-term thing. So basically, a lot of the studios have already opened like in May, and we've pushed ours back to July because we really want to try and get it right. So when we do reopen, like that's it. Like that's how we work now, and it doesn't go back to how it was. Like it stays like that because a lot of really positive things are coming out of it. But yeah, absolutely, we're not just going to open up the same as before. Like everything's different. Literally everything. We've had to buy lots of PPE, lots of cleaning wipes, sanitizers everywhere. Like we're going to have them on the walls and stuff. Yeah, social distancing is a big thing. Like we're going to make sure that people can social distance in a safe way. Like I say, we've like renovated the kitchen and bathroom area, put a shower in, because obviously if someone's just tracked, I remember you, Joe, you're very much a shirt off kind of drummer, but you know, if you've got a sweaty drummer like comes and hangs, comes and sits next to you or whatever, like we're just trying to sort of like cover all bases really. Well, look, go have a shower and sit over there so you were not all like sitting next to each other. So we're just making sure that we've got areas for like, we're looking at maybe 4 people at a time and then an engineer.
Yeah.
We're going to be flexible with it, but we've got the space and the different areas at the studio to have up to sort of like 5 or 6 people, including the staff. to stay safe, really. Like, you know, might involve wearing masks at certain times and keeping like good distance between everyone and making sure that we wash our hands and use sanitizer, which I'm sure everyone's going to be used to doing by July anyway. But yeah, it's been a lot of conversations and a lot of hard work to, like, especially before the guidelines came out. They only came out like a week ago about what studios should be doing. So we'd already ordered all our PPE and all our cleaning products and sanitizer like a week before the guidelines came out, because we knew that if we didn't, then we might struggle, because everyone's going to be wanting to buy the same stuff. So yeah, literally my front door at home has not stopped ringing with deliveries for the last like wipes and all sorts of really boring stuff like that you don't really want to be spending your money on. But if it means we can go back to making music again properly, then we're going to do it.
The idea of going to a recording studio and not being complete slobs and hanging out and sort of falling on each other at every opportunity you get and being stupid boys, which is sort of, you know, what the environment is sometimes. Then it's odd and not very nice to think that things are definitely not going back, you know, anytime soon to the way you'd think they might be.
No, they're not. But again, it's just trying to sort of see the positives out of it and try and, you know, maybe suggest some different practices for people. Like if we are multi-tracking, then maybe have a couple of people come in at a time, and then sort of minimise the amount of time that everyone's in the studio together, and just try and still keep it fun, but make sure that we're being safe at the same time. But yeah, like we were well aware that there's no normal anymore. So we just tried to put everything in place. So within a day, you've kind of used to it and it's all very clear of like how to do it with the space that we've got. We're hoping it's going to be good. Like, to be honest with you, like, there was definitely the conversation of like, is there even a music industry anymore? Like, none of the bands can play any shows. So, and that we all know that's the only way that bands make any money. So we're like, well, where does that leave us? Like, how are people going to afford to record if they can't play shows? Or like, if they're not going to be playing shows, then why would they record? Because when you release music, you then go and promote it. And if you can't promote it, then why would you release it? So we're just thinking, is there even an industry left? Like, are we wasting our time? Like, do we just call it a day and go and set up our little home studios and try and like survive this and then see what happens after that? Or do we like, you know, risk it all basically and try and invest some money and like give it a go, you know, and try and provide a place where people can come and still create, but do it in a safe way. And obviously we decided to do the latter because it's a lot more fun and exciting to do that than to give up. So I think it's going to be good.
It's all, I mean, you know, like on that point as well, where you said like, will there be a music industry to go back to? And like, so the artists can't play the shows, but you know, the venues might not survive this as well. So it's like it's very tough to see how things are going to go. Obviously, I think whatever happens, it will all come back in some way, because look at all these people that want it to, all these people that are involved in it. You know, it's never going to die. It will just have to be something different, which is what you're working towards.
So lately, I mean, I've recently purchased an electric drum kit, and so I've oddly been in demand lately for everyone trying to get some drum tracks.
So you can imagine that Joe has been asked to record audio, you know, which
I'm
is
a complete idiot. But it's kind of raised some interesting questions. I've sort of seen both sides. I've done it just drums straight into Audacity and then send that off to whoever's mixing it. We've done straight into GarageBand on iPads, and there's people putting things together with guitars straight into it. And these things are all very rough and ready. And I know there's going to be people listening to this podcast who are interested in. I'm interested in recording, but I'm at home and I want to sort of get a demo or something out. What would you say is the sort of the fundamental element of recording at home? Is it gear, or is it trying to get the right take, or, you know, what would you say it is?
I have a lot of conversations with a lot of artists about maybe if you got yourself set up at home, you know, because there's always the conversations of like, I really want to do this, but I can't afford it or whatever. And loads of people record at home now, and I think that for me ever since I started recording, I was one of the guys recording at home, so I couldn't sort of look down on other people doing the same, because that's how I started out anyway, in my bedroom with Cubase and all that. So it's always been a thing that's been part of it for me. Like I always, I'm ready for people to say like, oh yeah, we're going to go home and finish this, or we're going to go home and track some stuff and then come back. And that's totally cool with me. Like, that's just the way it is now. Like, obviously I'd rather do everything, but I'm also cool if that's what they want to do, because it's so common now that people have got little rigs at home. So you just have to work with them. But in terms of like, what's the most important thing, I think it does depend on what it is you want to do, but really it's a combination of things, really. It's like, it's a little bit about equipment, but it's also a bit about just being creative, being able to be really creative. So if you've got a really cheap mic, but you're a really creative person, then you'll probably come up with some great stuff. If you've got the best mic in the world, but you just haven't got any inspiration and you don't know what you want to do, and your environment isn't inspiring you, then you're probably not going to come up with anything good. Like, it's not the gear that's going to make it good. So I'd say, like, work within your budget, get some, read a lot of reviews online and try and look for the best thing you can get for your money. And then just be creative with it and just try and have fun. There are things you can do. You can set your room up differently and try and reduce the amount of like room spill and stuff like that. There's certain mics that you can buy that might be more suitable for recording at home, but essentially it comes down to kind of like not getting sort of too caught up in the technology and just trying to keep it simple and then make it all about the music. And I think that's probably your best bet. If you're really, really you're just starting out, that's probably your best bet, is just try and like, what's the fastest route to getting music recorded? Just go for that one to start off with. And then maybe like, as you learn more, look into the more technical stuff like later down the line.
I think that it's a really powerful thing to have, even just the facility to be able to play a click track and practice playing to a click track is, your song. I think that's a really powerful tool to then go to a studio with, because not being rehearsed to a click track or ever having played to a click track, sometimes that's just, you need to have that skill. So I think even if you just look at it as a practice tool, rather than, the way you are going to record your hit album is at home.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's just like, just make it about the music. If you want to do it yourself and you're not an expert, then don't try and become an expert overnight, because it's impossible. So stay a novice and just work on the music. And like you said, James, if it becomes a demo or it becomes just practice, then that's still valid. It's still going to help you in the long run. And there's plenty of people like me out there that are like willing to mix people's stuff that they've recorded at home. And if there's certain things that are unsalvageable, like you can go back and forth with them and maybe suggest like how they could maybe get a better result, like if for that song, or maybe for the next time, like maybe try doing it, make contact with someone that's a little bit more experienced, and you'll get some feedback, and then you'll learn so much from doing that than you would from, like, say, going on YouTube or just driving yourself mad at home on your iPad or whatever you're on. Like, for me, like with Youth Club, my band, we used mixers right from the very beginning. I was always the one that was on the phone to the mixer, like talking to him about the stems, and and it was some pretty high level people for me at the time. Like, it was quite exciting, but I learned so much from talking to them on the phone, and they validated me, and they told me I was doing a good job and things that I'd done sounded good, and it was such a valuable thing. And like, every single person that we worked with was really kind and done a great job, and I got something from it every time. So it's all good, like doing your own thing and recording at home. I'm all for it, because it's great, but that doesn't mean that there's not value in reaching out to someone that does it for a living or has got more experience, and just collaborate with someone else as well. And if you really want to get serious about it, that's the way to learn how to get better at it, definitely.
Well, I won't lie that I've definitely phoned James a couple of times saying, I've got the thingamajig and I don't know what to plug it into. Do I plug it into this one or this one?
I think in Joe's circumstance, it's like, it's a bit like MacGyvering. He's got a paper clip and a banana, and he needs to get it into his computer somehow. And
a bottle opener and a pen.
But this is where you learn this. So now you know that you can do that, Joe. You know you can do this electronic drum kit thing, and it isn't that much of a pain in the arse.
No, and if anything, I think this situation is going to turn a lot more people on to appreciating the work that goes into actually mixing and recording all this stuff, because I spent ages trying to reduce the amount of bass that was coming in because it was all clipping everywhere. I'd record it, it would sound in my ears, it was fine. Put it into the software, and it was just crazy, and I just could not get it right. And all it is just me being an idiot, basically. But it's just even things like, lining up tracks and just trying to get things to match up. And I'm trying to play some of it's like playing along to a pre-existing track, or at least a guide track to show what's going on. Trying to make sure that matches up perfectly in time. It's almost an art that...
It's just doing it though, Joe. I think it's the difference between you're doing something for the first time and me and Rees might have done it, done that one thing, that one move in that bit of software every day. So it's just...
I think there's probably lots of things. I'd be interested to know, between the two of you, the things that you feel that people would overlook as a beginner that actually is quite important. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but there are probably things that I'm just ignoring completely and going straight into, but actually in the overall picture, if I'd done that at the very beginning, that probably would have been something that would have made things either easier or sound better.
I think maybe gain staging is the thing that I find the most issues with people working at home.
Well, what does that mean, Rees, then? Explain what gain staging is. Because Joe's nodding.
Well, essentially what I'm getting at is, I'll receive a lot of Logic sessions where every track is above zero and the master bus is like way in the red, but it sounds pretty good. They've got a good sound, but rather than turning things down to balance it, they've kept turning things up, and you end up with a bit of a mess, but a kind of a good vibe. And often it's quite difficult to just grab them all and turn them down because it doesn't always sound as good as it should, and that can sometimes cause a bit of an issue. So I'd say for people that want to maybe get better at that sort of stuff, maybe look at learning on how to balance audio in some software, and there's some really basic videos on YouTube and stuff that will explain that, and you can have like a really set method of how you do it. So for instance, if you've got drums, a bass and some guitars and some vocals, perhaps you might want to start with the drums and make sure that the drums are hitting a certain level and not going above a certain level, and then bring in the bass and then make sure that, you're getting a bit more level, but you're still not exceeding a certain level. And then by the time you've done that, you should be able to bring everything else in without getting too hot or getting too loud. And if you are then too loud, you can then select all the channels and bring them all down in unison, and do that really early on. So you've always got room to do you know what? I want the drums to be more distorted. So you can add the distortion and you put this plugin on it that makes it distorted, but it also turns it up 3 dB. And you're like, that sounds good. But now you're 3 dB louder and you haven't got any headroom. Then you're going to be in a situation using Joe where everything was just really distorted. So I think that's
probably louder and louder and louder and louder, and then
there's only
nowhere to go from.
Yeah, you've got no room to work. So that's something that I always like to do, is make sure I give myself room. So if I do have an absolute gem of an idea, but it's going to make it louder, then and these days you can always just turn the output down of plugins and stuff anyway, but just make sure you've got room. So if you do want to turn something up, like in a certain section of a song or whatever, you're not going to start clipping, and then you're in You know, especially if you're knee deep in the mix where you've got automation happening and loads of stuff, you're not going to be able to just bring the level of the whole thing down and still have a good sound. So I think, you know, that would be my suggestion. Gain staging. If you don't know what it is, Google it.
I think you explained that well. That was good.
That was good. Yeah,
that was all right.
Thank you.
I keep seeing videos that are maybe presented in a way that looks like the band are playing live together over streaming or on Facebook and stuff, but that can't be done. There's no way.
That's what we did. That's what we did for the folk festival.
Yeah,
it looks similar.
It looks live,
but you play along to the scratch track, and then at the end of that, the lead singer sends through a track of him talking and doing all the stuff, and then you film yourself reacting to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you
could even do it in like a layered way, you know. So like maybe if you do know the song, the drummer knows the song, the drummer could just play the song. But yeah, they're probably just playing to a session. So that people shouldn't get confused. I keep seeing people keep asking me how they could do it, like, or bands I'm in, you know, oh, let's all get together on Zoom and have a band practice. You think
all out time.
I couldn't imagine something that it would sound like hell, you know.
I've certainly lost the appetite of watching someone and their guitar in front of their phone. I've got my PA set up so it's going to sound better, but it's still going through a phone. And at the end of the day, it's being recorded through a phone and then played back through someone else's phone. So it comes back to that basic principle of make it awesome, and it'll be awesome because the sound's going to be shit no matter what.
Have you seen that Lady Gaga thing? You know, Lady Gaga did that Night of All the Stars or whatever it was, maybe a few months ago, and she was singing into her a Neumann mic. It was something ridiculous, like 20 grand, 50 grand. It was round the wrong way.
The piano sounded beautiful.
Yeah, I know. But even the vocals sounded pretty good. So it was either mimed or it sounds good turned round the wrong way. Who knows? The second song, it was right in the right way. Someone realised it was fucked up.
That was the one where Elton John sounded like he was his nose was.
I'm still danding. He's still danding, mate. Lost his tus and his t's. I don't know why.
Just no sibilants.
I think what that is he's so used to playing with a big band. You know, it's probably been a while since he hasn't done that stuff with a big band. And then he was by himself and he was still doing it like he was with a big band, you know. Maybe usually as backing singers. It was full of energy, like he was on a big stadium stage, but it was just surreal.
A basketball hoop in the background.
Yeah, the basketball hoop. I don't know why that. I'm glad you picked up on the basketball hoop.
Again, I'll say it again though, the piano sounded awesome on that live session. Elton John getting really engineer geeky. Listen to the way the piano sounded amazing. I was like, wow, that piano sounds good. He's freaking me out, but the piano sounds great.
We like to ask all our guests about a band or a local artist they'd like to sort of, or you know, someone they'd like to put in the limelight on the podcast.
I guess the person I'd choose would probably be Becky's new single, because that's been the thing that's been released most recently that I worked on, and pretty heavily involved with working with Becky and working on the songs. So yeah, Becky Margaret God would be awesome if you go check it out on Spotify or.
I recommend that people listen to that song and then go watch the video on your Facebook page, where you go and you break it down track by track and you sort of explain how each part of it works. Because that was I watched the whole thing. I really enjoyed that. It's fascinating because there's elements to the music that as a listener you don't necessarily hear first of all, and then when someone points it out to you, oh yeah, I do realise that's what it is. I mean the layering of the drums as well. I mean that was really good. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, listen to the drums.
Shocking that Joe puts that out.
Becky's music's definitely got a lot of layers. But so the new single is called God, which has just come out. And the song that I done the video for on my YouTube, which is Rees Broomfield mixing and production, little plug, is a song called New York. So, but if you go to a Spotify page, you can listen to all the stuff that she's done on there. And that would be my choice, Becky Margaret.
I think it's cool that every summer we still put on Colours, the Youth Club EP. It's a very good vibe for the summer.
It's on the Straight Razor playlist as well that we play at gigs.
It's great for the barbecue.
BBQ.
The barbecue and the drinks and the sandals, put on Colours.
There was definitely preconceived to make music that was like for that. Like that's that we were all dreaming of like living in Jamaica and being on the beach and making music. That was our dream. So we just sort of tried to sort of get that to come across in like some indie pop.
I think if that was the mission statement, then you've definitely done that, Rees.
It really was, and I'm not normally like for that, like having a real like trying to make music for something. But it was definitely, we definitely had conversations like, let's make it summery, let's make it like good vibes, and it worked. People seem to have a good time when they listen to it. So
I think that sets it apart from a lot of other local bands, is that you can sort of, when you're making music, it's very easy to go, oh, we should now have this insular moment, and I think Youth Club's really good at sort of, it's almost like a DJ set, because obviously you've got two DJs in the band, so you sort of keep it moving the whole time. It's always really about that sort of vibe, and when you play live shows, people sort of go to them with this energy of almost like they're going out clubbing.
No one gets the name, but yeah, like it's not because everyone always says like, oh, what are you going to be called when you get older? You're going to be Old Club, and it's like, oh, you've completely missed the point, haven't you? It's like, so just to clarify this now on the Straight Razor podcast, that Youth Club is, the idea was, for me anyway, this wasn't, I don't think this was everyone, this was mainly me, but it was like, as long as you can make music, then you're forever young. And also Beautiful. Being part of a band is always felt like being like in a club, and we wanted to have a fan base and them to sort of like join our club. So it was like Youth Club it just made sense. I sort of like the idea that as you get older, if it will also take on this different meaning. If you're 50 and you have, or even 60, getting on, who knows, and all you boys are still playing together, there's almost this element of like the Youth Club is the band itself. It's like, this is our club of us boys this is what our youth is into. This is where our youthful energy is. I like that idea too. It's got so many meanings. Who knew?
I like that we got the exclusive though. Love that. That's the headline. That's the title of this track.
Yeah. What does Youth Club mean?
You heard it here first, boys.
Rees, thank you so much. I hope you're, you seem to be holding up quite well in your fort there, your little shed fort, your music production hub. I like it a lot. And, I hope that all of this quarantine isn't getting to you too much. And I hope the family are all cool.
No, thanks guys. It's been good fun. Nice to catch up with you both, especially you, Joe, because I don't get to see you anymore. But yeah, man, like, it's all good. Hang in there, everyone. It's there's for me anyway. There's definitely bad days and good days, but just trying to ride it out and get back to making music. And I think I'll be all right. I think if I didn't have music, I'd go insane. So, and stuff like this is good as well. Being able to get online and speak to people.
For me, I think that the biggest thing about all this lockdown stuff has been the swinging okayness of it. It's funny how one day everything's fine, and you can have the same day the next day, and it feels just shit. It feels like just, proper not what you want to be in. Yeah,
but I think, if people listening to this are maybe feeling that way, and that, they've realised that we're feeling the same, then, just hearing you say that makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah.
Because, I've always been quite closed off emotionally, and I wouldn't really show my emotions and stuff. And, I think since having kids and stuff and kind of growing up, you have to realize that you do have to manage your emotions, otherwise you get into a real mess. And for me, talking to people about it and realizing that lots of other people are going through the exact same thing, and it's okay to be that way, actually really helps, because otherwise you fall into that self-loathing sort of thing where you kind of hate yourself because you feel like crap all the time, and you don't really know why. So the whole lockdown situation certainly hasn't helped with everyone who has problems with that sort of stuff anyway. So hopefully everyone's keeping well, and hopefully this has helped a little bit maybe.
Blokes need to talk about these things more, innit? So hopefully us blokes are all talking about it now, which is nice. Yeah,
there you go. I'm all for it. I look like a very manly man, but really I'm an absolute pansy. So I love talking about my emotions.
All right, man, have a nice night. I'm going to get back to the fam. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Cheers, Rees.
No worries.
Goodbye.
Big up, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
See ya.
So that was the podcast with Rees. As we say, we're trying to do this every week. Let us know what you think. If you've got any other questions, if you want us to do anything else, cover any subject, let us know in the comments. Just like, subscribe, follow us on Spotify, Apple Music and everything else. And cheers for the support. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
So pull me up when it's